Did you know that a parrot was the star of a US president's funeral? Not just any parrot, a swearing parrot? Yes, you heard that right. One of the most unexpected guests at US President Andrew Jackson's funeral was his pet parrot, and it wasn't there to pay its respects quietly. Let's set the stage. The year was 1845 and the 7th President of the United States, Andrew Jackson, had passed away. Known for his fiery personality and controversial policies, Jackson was a figure who sparked as much debate in death as he did in life. But amidst the mourning and the political discussions, there was one attendee who didn't seem to care much for the solemnity of the occasion. That attendee was Jackson's beloved pet parrot, a tropical bird named Paul. Jackson, a known animal lover, had received Paul as a gift, and the two had formed a close bond. Now, parrots are known for their ability to mimic human speech, and it seems that Paul had picked up a rather colorful vocabulary from his owner. As the funeral ceremonies were underway, mourners were shocked as Paul began to squawk out obscenities, filling the air with words that would make a sailor blush. And Paul wasn't just muttering these words under his beak. Oh no, he was shouting them at the top of his lungs, causing quite a stir among the gathered crowd. The situation got so out of hand that the parrot had to be removed from the premises. Imagine that! A parrot causing a ruckus at a presidential funeral, and not just any funeral, but that of a man known as Old Hickory, a man who had fought in numerous duels and had led the nation through some of its most tumultuous times. What a sight it must have been! The dignitaries, the mourners, and the unexpected guest. A parrot with no regard for decorum. It's a story that adds a touch of the absurd to the annals of history. So there you have it, the tale of the swearing parrot at Andrew Jackson's funeral. Now imagine a parrot causing a ruckus at a presidential funeral. To understand this bizarre event, we need to delve into the history of Andrew Jackson and his feathered friend. Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States, was a man of fiery temperament and strong convictions. His presidency, from 1829 to 1837, was marked by a number of controversies, but one thing is undeniable. The man had personality. Now, let's shift our focus to the other star of this story, Jackson's pet parrot. Named Paul, this African gray was more than just a pet to Jackson. Paul was a companion who shared his daily life, from the quiet moments at the Hermitage, Jackson's Tennessee plantation, to the lively gatherings with political allies and rivals. But here's where things get interesting. African gray parrots are known for their impressive cognitive abilities and their knack for mimicry. They can learn and repeat words, phrases, and even sounds with astonishing accuracy. Imagine living with a man as outspoken as Jackson. It's not hard to picture Paul picking up a word or two that might raise some eyebrows. Jackson, a man known for his colorful language, surely must have slipped a few choice words within earshot of Paul. And being the intelligent creature that he was, Paul might have repeated those words, not understanding their meaning, but delivering them with the same passion and intensity he'd observed in his owner. It was said that Jackson tried to curb his language around Paul, but anyone who's owned a parrot knows how sneaky these birds can be with picking up words they're not supposed to. So, it's not entirely improbable that Paul had a repertoire that would make a sailor blush. So it seems like Jackson's fiery personality might have rubbed off on his parrot. This gives us a bit of context as to why, at Jackson's funeral, attendees were shocked by the parrot's outburst. But was it really an outburst of profanity, or is this just a tall tale from history? Stick around to find out. Now let's talk about the day that put this parrot in the history books. Our tale takes us back to 1845, when the United States mourned the loss of its 7th president, Andrew Jackson. The funeral was a somber affair, filled with grieving faces, hushed whispers, and a parrot. Yes, you heard that right, a parrot. But not just any parrot. This was the pet parrot of the late Andrew Jackson himself, a feathered creature named Paul. Now, Paul wasn't your ordinary pet. No, this colorful avian had a personality as fiery and unfiltered as Jackson himself. It was said that Jackson had taught the bird to speak, but perhaps the lessons went a little too far. As the funeral service began, the mourners were all ears to the eulogy, reminiscing the life and legacy of their beloved president. Suddenly, an unexpected interruption shattered the solemn silence. It was Paul, the parrot, breaking out in what can only be described as a flurry of feather-ruffling profanity. The kind of language that would make even a seasoned sailor blush. The parrot's shocking outburst was so loud and filled with such colorful language that it disrupted the entire funeral service. The mourners were taken aback, some gasping in surprise, others could barely stifle their laughter, and a few were downright scandalized. The bird, seemingly oblivious to the chaos it had caused, continued its verbal tirade unabated. Eventually, the decision was made to remove the foul-mouthed fowl from the premises. This was no easy task, mind you. It took several attempts and a lot of patience before Paul was finally escorted out of the chapel, leaving behind an audience both shocked and amused. So there you have it, the tale of the parrot that turned a presidential funeral into a fiasco. Quite the scandal for the era, and a story that has since become a fascinating piece of historical trivia. But just imagine the shock of the mourners when they heard the parrot. But the question remains, did this really happen, or is it just a tall tale? Let's examine the sources of this story. The tale of Andrew Jackson's foul-mouthed parrot comes from a primary source, Reverend William Menifee Normant, who was the officiant at Jackson's funeral. In his recounting, the parrot was indeed swearing so much that it had to be removed. This account was later published in the Nashville Whig, a newspaper of the time. But wait, can parrots even swear, you might ask? Well, parrots are known for their ability to mimic human speech, and they do so without understanding the meaning of the words. If Jackson had a habit of swearing around the parrot, it's entirely plausible that the bird picked up a few choice phrases. Now let's consider the validity of the incident given the conservative nature of the Victorian era. A swearing parrot would have been quite scandalous. It's unlikely that such a detail would have been invented and then published. Moreover, the Reverend had no reason to lie about this incident. Finally, let's look at the likelihood of a parrot causing such a scene. Parrots are known to be loud and disruptive when they're stressed or excited. A funeral with its solemn atmosphere and large crowd could have easily upset the bird, causing it to vocalize loudly. In this case, its learned language of choice happened to be profanity. So is this story fact or fiction? Well, given the primary source, the capabilities of parrots, and the circumstances, it's entirely possible that this event did take place. But without additional corroborating evidence, we can't say for certain. Whether it's true or not, it's certainly a story that has ruffled some feathers. So, what do you think? Did Andrew Jackson's parrot really swear at his funeral, or is it just a historical hoax? We've shared with you the historical context, the unexpected funeral guest, the funeral fiasco, and now it's time for you to be the judge. Was this feathered friend just mouthing off, or was it a bird with a bone to pick? Maybe you're a skeptic who thinks this tale is a bit too tall, or perhaps you're a believer who thinks this parrot was just speaking its mind. Whatever your stance, we'd love to hear it. And don't stop there. If you know of any other historical oddities, be they bizarre, hilarious, or downright unbelievable, don't keep them to yourself, share them with us. Unraveling these historical mysteries is a community effort, and every bit of input helps. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. Remember, history is full of surprises.